A smart woman does not protect herself by building walls. She protects herself by understanding human nature, by recognizing that intimacy is not created by exposure alone, and that mystery is not deception. It is dignity. In a world that pressures women to explain themselves, to justify their feelings, and to narrate every wound they carry, intelligence often appears quiet. A smart woman does not reveal everything she knows, feels, or fears, not because she is cold, but because she understands how power unconsciously shifts when certain truths are spoken too early or too freely. This is not about manipulation. It is about psychological self-respect. There are 3 things a smart woman never reveals to a man. But to understand them fully, we must explore 5 inner principles that govern her silence. A woman's emotional wounds are not simply memories of pain. They are living imprints on the psyche, shaped by moments where trust was broken, love was withdrawn, or safety disappeared without warning. A smart woman understands this intuitively. She knows that her wounds are not stories meant for immediate display, nor are they confessions to be offered in exchange for affection. They are inner experiences that require meaning, integration, and time. To reveal them fully, without discernment, is not courage. It is exposure without protection. Human beings are not neutral witnesses. When someone listens to another's pain, they do not only hear it, they interpret it through their own unresolved conflicts, fears, and desires. A woman who reveals the full depth of her emotional wounds too quickly often believes she is creating intimacy. Yet psychologically, intimacy is not born from disclosure alone. It is born from safety. Without safety, vulnerability becomes a quiet surrender of power, and power, once shifted, rarely returns unchanged. A smart woman senses this before she can explain it. She notices how, when pain is shared prematurely, it can subtly redefine how she is seen. Instead of being perceived as whole, complex, and evolving, she risks being unconsciously reduced to her suffering. Her wounds become labels: the abandoned one, the betrayed one, the insecure one. And once a label settles into the unconscious of another person, it quietly shapes their expectations and behavior. This is not because people are cruel by nature. It is because the psyche seeks patterns. When someone learns where another person bleeds, the mind registers both intimacy and leverage. Sometimes this shows itself gently, through overprotection, subtle dominance, or diminished respect. Other times it emerges during conflict, when old wounds are brought up not to heal but to win. A smart woman understands that what is known can be used, even unintentionally. There is also a deeper reason she remains guarded. Emotional wounds, when spoken aloud before they are understood internally, often regain their power. Pain that has not been integrated tends to repeat itself. When a woman recounts her trauma without having made meaning of it, she may unknowingly relive it, reinforcing the identity of someone still trapped in that experience. Silence, in this sense, is not repression, it is incubation. It is the space where insight forms. Psychological research supports this lived wisdom. Studies on trauma processing show that healing requires not only expression, but containment. Without the right listener, disclosure can increase distress, rather than relieve it. A smart woman chooses her listeners carefully. She knows that not everyone who is curious is capable of holding pain without distorting it. She also understands that timing is everything. Trust is not declared, it is observed. It reveals itself through consistency, emotional responsibility, and the ability to remain present when things are uncomfortable. Only when a man demonstrates that he can sit with complexity without trying to fix, control, or escape, does she allow deeper layers of her story to emerge. Even then, she reveals them slowly, allowing connection to grow alongside understanding. This restraint does not make her distant. On the contrary, it makes her grounded. She does not deny her pain, nor does she pretend it does not exist. She simply refuses to turn her wounds into a currency for closeness. She knows that real intimacy is not accelerated by emotional urgency. It unfolds naturally when both people have proven they can meet each other without exploitation or fear. There is strength in this approach, though it is often misunderstood. In a culture that equates openness with authenticity, a woman who holds back is sometimes seen as guarded or emotionally unavailable. But there is a profound difference between secrecy and discernment. Secrecy hides truth out of fear. Discernment protects truth out of wisdom. A smart woman practices the latter. She also knows that her healing is her responsibility. She does not ask a man to repair what was broken by others. She may invite him to witness her growth, but she does not assign him the role of savior. This protects both of them. It allows love to form not around wounds, but around shared presence, mutual respect, and emotional maturity. Over time, something remarkable happens. Because she does not lead with pain, she is experienced as stable. Because she does not collapse into her past, she is seen in the present. And because she reveals herself gradually, each layer carries weight and meaning. Her story is not consumed, it is honored. In the end, a smart woman understands a quiet psychological truth. Not everything that hurts needs to be spoken immediately, and not everyone who asks deserves the answer. Her emotional wounds are not shameful secrets, but neither are they public truths. They are sacred experiences, revealed only where there is the capacity to receive them without harm. And in choosing when and how to speak, she preserves not only her dignity, but the integrity of her inner world. The fear of losing someone is one of the most ancient emotions in the human psyche. It rises from the same place where attachment, longing, and survival once lived side by side. A smart woman is not immune to this fear. She feels it deeply, sometimes intensely. But what distinguishes her is not the absence of fear, it is her relationship to it. She understands that fear, when spoken to freely, begins to shape reality rather than simply describe it. When a woman reveals her fear of losing a man, she often believes she is expressing love. And in a sense, she is. But psychologically, fear carries a different signal than devotion. It tells the unconscious mind of the other person that the bond is no longer mutual ground but uneven terrain. One stands on solid earth, the other clings to it. The moment this imbalance is sensed, something subtle shifts. Desire, respect, and curiosity do not disappear immediately, but they are altered. The human psyche responds strongly to perceived security. When someone feels needed more than they feel chosen, the bond changes its quality. A woman who openly confesses her fear of abandonment risks transforming love into reassurance seeking, presence into dependency. This is not because the man intends harm, but because the unconscious interprets fear as a signal of emotional leverage. What once felt reciprocal can slowly feel guaranteed. A smart woman recognizes this long before words form. She notices how fear, once voiced, begins to demand proof. Messages must be returned, attention must be constant, silence becomes threatening. The relationship, instead of expanding, begins to contract around anxiety. She understands that fear does not create closeness, it creates vigilance, and vigilance is exhausting for both people. This awareness does not make her cold. She does not suppress her emotions or deny her attachment. She simply refuses to let fear speak louder than self-respect. She knows that when fear becomes a language of love, it teaches the other person how much power they hold. And power, when unbalanced, quiet. Why erodes intimacy? There is also a deeper psychological layer at work. Fear of loss often awakens unresolved childhood patterns, moments when love felt uncertain, conditional, or easily withdrawn. When a woman reveals this fear without understanding its roots, she may unconsciously invite the past into the present. The relationship becomes a stage where old wounds seek resolution. A smart woman senses this danger. She understands that a partner is not meant to repair what was once broken in silence. Instead of voicing fear, she cultivates inner stability. She learns to sit with uncertainty without collapsing into it. This does not mean she becomes indifferent. It means she develops a center that does not depend on constant reassurance. She allows space to exist, trusting that what is real does not vanish simply because it is not tightly held. Psychological research on attachment supports this instinctive wisdom. Relationships thrive when both individuals experience themselves as whole, rather than incomplete without the other. When fear of loss dominates, the bond becomes a refuge rather than a meeting place. A smart woman wants connection, not captivity, neither for herself nor for the man she loves. She also understands the paradox of attraction. What we cling to tends to pull away, what stands securely invites approach. When a woman does not reveal her fear of losing someone, she preserves an atmosphere of choice. Her presence feels voluntary, not anxious. This creates a dynamic where affection is renewed, not demanded. In everyday life, this often appears simple. She does not panic at temporary distance. She does not chase explanations for every silence. She allows the rhythm of the relationship to breathe. In doing so, she communicates something far more powerful than words, that she values connection, but not at the cost of herself. This restraint protects her dignity. It also protects the relationship. Fear, once spoken, cannot be unheard. It lingers, shaping interactions in ways neither person fully controls. A smart woman chooses containment over confession. She listens to her fear, but she does not make it the architect of her behavior. Over time, this inner discipline transforms the bond. The man senses her emotional solidity. He feels wanted, not responsible. He experiences love as an invitation, not an obligation. And because of this, his presence becomes more intentional, not less. Ultimately, a smart woman understands a quiet truth about the psyche. Love flourishes in freedom, not fear. By not revealing her fear of losing him, she honors both her emotional depth and her inner strength. She allows love to grow where it belongs, between two individuals who stand on their own, choosing each other not out of terror of loss, but out of genuine connection. Insecurity is not a flaw of character. It is a natural response to being human in a world that constantly reflects back expectations, judgments, and comparisons. Every woman carries insecurities, formed quietly over time through experiences of rejection, criticism, or moments when she learned that love could feel conditional. A smart woman does not deny these inner doubts, nor does she pretend they do not exist. What distinguishes her is that she does not reveal all of them, especially not to someone who has not yet proven the capacity to hold them with care. The psyche, though, earns through repetition. When a woman repeatedly voices her insecurities, she does more than express vulnerability. She reinforces an inner narrative. Words shape perception, and perception shapes identity. What is spoken often becomes believed not only by others but by the self. A smart woman senses this subtle danger. She understands that insecurity, when named again and again, can slowly become a role she inhabits rather than a feeling she passes through. Human relationships are mirrors. People often see us as we first teach them to see us. When a woman openly catalogs her self-doubt about her body, her worth, her intelligence, her lovability, those doubts do not disappear through exposure. Instead, they begin to inform how she is treated, not always through cruelty, but through unconscious alignment. The mind of the other absorbs these signals and adjusts expectations accordingly. Respect can quietly weaken where confidence is consistently questioned. This is not an argument against honesty, it is an argument for discernment. A smart woman knows that there is a difference between sharing a fear and handing it over for interpretation. Insecurities are raw material, not finished truths. They require reflection before revelation. Without this inner work, disclosure can feel like relief in the moment, but it often creates vulnerability without grounding. There is also a deeper emotional consequence. When insecurities are revealed too freely, the relationship can begin to revolve around reassurance. Conversations subtly shift from connection to validation. Love becomes a response to self-doubt, rather than a meeting of equals. Over time, this dynamic exhausts both people. The woman feels temporarily soothed, but increasingly dependent. The man feels increasingly responsible for maintaining her sense of worth. A smart woman recognizes this pattern before it fully forms. She understands that no amount of external reassurance can heal an insecurity that has not been faced internally. She may seek comfort, but she does not outsource her self-esteem. She chooses to explore her doubts in spaces where growth is possible, through self-reflection, trusted friendships, or inner work that allows insight rather than judgment. Psychological studies support this lived wisdom. Research on self-perception shows that people internalize the identities they repeatedly express. When someone consistently describes themselves as inadequate, the mind begins to treat that description as fact, rather than feeling. A smart woman protects herself from this trap. She does not allow momentary doubt to define her enduring sense of self. This restraint is often mistaken for confidence without cracks, but the truth is more nuanced. A smart woman feels uncertainty like anyone else. She questions herself, compares herself, and sometimes struggles with self-acceptance. What she does differently is pause before turning these inner whispers into spoken declarations. She asks herself whether sharing will lead to understanding or simply reinforce the fear. In daily life, this appears in small, quiet ways. She does not constantly apologize for existing. She does not preemptively criticize herself to avoid being judged. She does not seek compliments to counter every doubt. Instead, she allows others to encounter her without a script of insecurity guiding their perception. She gives herself the chance to be seen fully, not filtered through self-criticism. This approach creates a subtle but powerful presence. When a woman does not reveal all her insecurities, she is experienced as grounded. Her confidence feels calm rather than performative. People respond to her as someone who respects herself, even while she continues to grow. This respect often invites gentleness, not judgment. There is also an inner liberation that comes from this practice. By not voicing every insecurity, she learns to sit with discomfort without immediately seeking relief. This builds emotional strength. Over time, insecurities lose some of their intensity, not because they are ignored, but because they are no longer fed by constant attention. Ultimately, a smart woman understands that insecurity is not something to confess endlessly or eradicate completely. It is something to understand, soften, and integrate. By choosing when and with whom to share her doubts, she protects her sense of self and preserves the balance of her relationships. In doing so, she allows her identity to be shaped by growth rather than fear, and her presence to be defined by quiet self-trust rather than constant self-questioning. The experiences of disrespect leave marks that are often invisible but deeply embedded in the psyche. They form in moments when a woman stays silent to keep the peace, accepts less than she deserves to avoid loss, or convinces herself that endurance is the same as love. A smart woman carries the memory of these moments, but she does not reveal how much she once tolerated. Not because she is ashamed, but because she understands how the past quietly informs the present. When it is spoken without awareness, human beings learn about boundaries not only from what is demanded, but from what has been accepted before. When a woman openly describes how poorly she was treated in the past, she may believe she is demonstrating strength or honesty, yet psychologically, this information does not remain neutral. It becomes a reference point. The unconscious mind of the listener registers how far she once allowed herself to be pushed, and that knowledge can subtly shape future behavior. This is not always deliberate. Most disrespect is not planned. It emerges gradually through small tests of tolerance. A delayed reply here, a dismissive comment there, an unspoken expectation that her needs can wait. When someone knows that a woman once endured far worse, the mind may rationalize minor transgressions as insignificant. What was once unacceptable begins to feel negotiable. A smart woman understands this dynamic. She knows that respect is not built through explanation but through presence and action. She does not narrate her endurance as a badge of honor. She does not recount how much she survived to prove resilience. She recognizes that resilience, when misunderstood, can invite repetition. Instead, she allows her current standards to speak for themselves. There is also a psychological risk in retelling stories of tolerated disrespect. When a woman repeatedly revisits these memories, she may unconsciously anchor her identity to them. She becomes the one who endured, the one who stayed, the one who accepted. While these experiences are part of her history, they are not meant to define her future. A smart woman senses that to move forward, she must loosen her attachment to these narratives rather than reinforce them. Silence in this context is not denial, it is transformation. By not revealing how much she once accepted, she refuses to normalize it. She allows her present self to exist independently of her past compromises. This is an act of psychological separation, a necessary step in reclaiming agency. Research on boundary formation supports this instinctive wisdom. People are more likely to respect limits that are demonstrated consistently rather than explained repeatedly. A smart woman embodies her boundaries. She does not threaten, justify, or over-explain. When disrespect appears, she responds calmly and decisively. Her reaction communicates more than any story ever could. In everyday interactions, this often appears subtle. She does not laugh off comments that diminish her. She does not stay silent when her time is devalued. She does not excuse behavior that erodes trust. These responses are not dramatic, they are measured. And because they are consistent, they establish a clear psychological message. This is where the line stands. There is also an emotional freedom in this restraint. When a woman stops recounting how much she once tolerated, she stops reliving it. She releases herself from the role of someone who endured disrespect and steps into the role of someone who expects dignity. This shift changes not only how others treat her, but how she experiences herself. A smart woman understands that people respond not to what she survived, but to what she permits now. She does not educate others on her pain in the hope that they will behave better. She trusts her actions to teach what words cannot. This trust reflects an inner confidence that no longer seeks validation through disclosure. Over time, this approach reshapes her relationships. She attracts those who are capable of meeting her standards because they are not lowered through explanation. She repels those who seek flexibility where none is offered. The dynamic becomes clear without confrontation. At a deeper level, this practice is about reclaiming authorship of one's life. By not revealing how much disrespect she once tolerated, a woman refuses to let her past negotiate her present. She honors the lessons learned without reopening the wounds that taught them. Her silence becomes a boundary in itself, one that protects her sense of self and signals a new psychological reality. Ultimately, a smart woman knows that dignity does not require an audience. It is lived quietly, enforced gently, and preserved through consistency. By allowing her actions to speak instead of her past, she transforms endurance into self-respect and history into wisdom. The desire to be loved is among the most powerful forces in the human psyche. It shapes choices, bends values, and can quietly persuade a person to abandon parts of themselves in the hope of being chosen. A smart woman feels this desire as deeply as anyone else, yet she carries an inner awareness that love, when it demands self-erasure, is no longer love but a subtle form of disappearance. She never reveals that she would lose herself for love, not because she is unfeeling, but because she understands the psychological cost of such a confession. To admit that one would abandon their identity for another is to announce that the center of gravity has shifted outward. The self becomes negotiable. In the unconscious mind of the listener, this knowledge alters the relational balance. Love begins to feel less like a meeting of equals, and more like a structure in which one person provides meaning while the other provides sacrifice. Even when no harm is intended, respect struggles to survive in this imbalance. A smart woman recognizes that identity is not something to be offered as proof of devotion. The self is not a bargaining chip, nor is it a gift that strengthens through surrender. She understands that the psyche requires continuity to remain whole. When a woman hints that she would change her values, silence her needs, or diminish her aspirations for love, she communicates not depth of feeling but fragility of self, and fragility once perceived invites pressure. This awareness often emerges from lived experience. Many women have discovered painfully that the more they give up themselves, the less they are seen. When goals are abandoned, friendships neglected, or boundaries softened to preserve attachment, love does not deepen. Instead, it often becomes conditional on continued sacrifice. The woman remains, but the self slowly dissolves. Psychological observation supports this pattern. Relationships thrive when both individuals maintain a clear sense of identity. The self is the anchor that allows connection without collapse. Without it, attachment becomes fusion, and fusion suffocates growth. A smart woman understands this instinctively. She knows that love should expand her life, not replace it. This does not mean she is rigid or unwilling to adapt. Growth in relationship requires compromise. But compromise is not the same as disappearance. A smart woman adjusts without erasing, bends without breaking. She does not announce how far she is willing to go, because she knows that once the limits of self-sacrifice are revealed, they may be tested. There is also a deeper emotional truth beneath her restraint. When a woman declares that she would lose herself for love, she often speaks from a place of fear of being alone, fear of not being enough, fear that love is scarce and must be preserved at any cost. A smart woman listens to this fear, but she does not let it define her behavior. She understands that fear, when mistaken for devotion, leads to choices that betray the self in the name of connection. Instead of promising disappearance, she offers presence. She remains fully herself within the relationship. She keeps her interests alive, her voice intact, her inner life rich. This independence is not a threat to intimacy, it is its foundation. When two whole individuals come together, love becomes a choice renewed daily, not a survival strategy. In everyday moments, this self-possession appears quietly. She does not reshape her values to avoid disagreement. She does not silence her needs to maintain harmony. She does not abandon her growth to match another's comfort. These choices are not acts of defiance, they are acts of self-respect. And self-respect, once established, creates a gravitational pull that deepens attraction rather than diminishing it. There is also a profound sense of safety in loving someone who does not vanish. When a woman remains herself, she allows the man to love a real person, not a reflection shaped to please him. This authenticity invites genuine connection. It also places responsibility where it belongs, on both individuals to meet each other honestly, without illusion or sacrifice masquerading as devotion. Over time, this approach transforms the experience of love. The relationship becomes a space of mutual recognition rather than quiet loss. The woman does not need to prove her worth through surrender, because her worth is not negotiable. She stands rooted in her identity, allowing love to move around her rather than consume her. A smart woman understands a fundamental psychological truth. Love that requires self-erasure will eventually demand more than one can give. By never revealing that she would lose herself for love, she protects the integrity of her inner world. In doing so, she preserves the possibility of a relationship that honors both connection and individuality, where love is not an escape from the self, but a place where the self is fully seen and allowed to exist. Her mystery is not distance, her restraint is not coldness, it is clarity, and in a world obsessed with oversharing, clarity is power. If you want, I can also